A string of cybersecurity attacks has been impacting businesses big and small. It's driving up the prices of things we buy every day, and the attacks have the potential of putting lives at risk. The attacks seem to be growing in severity and scope, and that has a lot of people asking questions about what's being done to stop the threat. Joining us for Insight is Congressman Michael McCaul. He is the lead Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the co-founder of the Congressional Cybersecurity Caucus. Welcome.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So we see these attacks in the headlines. It seems like they are more frequent. Is that the case, and why?
They've gone up about 300% since the beginning of the year. I think since the new administration has come in, I think in my judgment, Putin, Russia is testing the new administration. This would be the sixth largest attack since the president got sworn in. And certainly since this summit 3 weeks ago, this is the largest ransomware attack in U.S. history. I don't think it's by chance. I do think that Mr. Putin is behind this. I think he tacitly approves, whether it be Russian mafia or state-sponsored attacks. It's all coming out of the Kremlin. And I think we have to be strong in our response. I mean, the president drew red lines at the summit, and now Mr. Putin is crossing that red line again. And I think it's important that we respond when he crosses the red line.
Yeah, what is the federal government's role here? I mean, businesses are being attacked, so is it up to them to amp up security?
Well, we started the cybersecurity agency under Department of Homeland Security, authorized it into law that interfaces with the private sector to make it more resilient, share threat information, and that helps. But I also think we need international norms and standards that we don't have currently, in my lead position on the Foreign Affairs Committee, working with other countries to have what's acceptable and what's not in this space. And I do think when there's a destructive attack that's state-sponsored, either sanctions or a cyber response going on the offensive to hit them back. Otherwise, there's no deterrence, and bad behavior will continue with impunity unless they know that there will be a response. So far, we haven't seen any.
When you talk about Russia, you mentioned, working with other countries. Specifically, how do you do that?
Well, it's hard to work with Russia. Any foreign nation adversary like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, they all perpetrate these cyber attacks on a daily basis, but we can work with our allies. We work with the Eastern Baltic nations that get hit by Russia on a daily basis. And I think we have to be punitive. I think, again, sanctions on the oligarchs where it counts. And this money, this ransomware, goes through Bitcoin to these Russian mafia groups, then to the oligarchs, and then ultimately ends up in Mr. Putin's coffers. So the sanctions, like on Nord Stream 2, that Congress mandatorily sanctioned, would stop Putin's pipeline into Europe. Unfortunately, President Biden found a national interest waiver that he executed to allow Mr. Putin to do this pipeline. I think these are things we need to be looking at to say enough is enough. We had this meeting in Geneva, we gave you red lines, and now he's clearly disregarding those red lines.
We mentioned you're the co-chair of the Cybersecurity Caucus. What do lawmakers on that particular group actually do?
Well, we talk about the issue on many fronts. And when I chaired Homeland Security Committee, I really ramped up the nation's efforts in cybersecurity. That's more on the defensive side. About 85% of the threat information is in the private sector, so we have to find a way to share that and get it out to other companies so they can patch their networks from this type of cyber attack. Then there's also the DoD and NSA that can go on the offensive. And then my bill to create an ambassador, a cybersecurity ambassador, to establish norms and standards in the international space, which is the key thing that's missing right now. But we have tremendous offensive capability. The president has to order that.
I'd like to talk to you about another issue kind of related to this, is the chip shortage that we have heard so much about in recent days. Senator Cornyn has called it a national security issue. I know you led the way in the House on the Chips for America Act. What does the act do, and exactly what else needs to be done?
Well, I think in the wake of COVID, we realized we were just way too dependent on China for various things like medical supply, like rare earth minerals, and then finally advanced semiconductor chips. Anything that's in the national security realm, we need to break our supply chain out of the region and bring it either into the United States or with allied nations where we can better protect it. Now, these semiconductor chips are in everything from your iPhone to the F-35. They're in our most advanced weapon systems at the Pentagon, of high value and importance from a national security standpoint. Our Senator Cornyn and I have worked in a bipartisan manner, a rare event these days to actually have members on both sides coming together for something that makes sense. And that is, let's bring the manufacturing jobs back to the United States to make this highly important national security piece, the chip, here. And we do that through both tax incentives and a grant program with the Department of Commerce. This has gotten broad bipartisan, bicameral support. I was in the White House with President Biden, 8 of us in the Oval Office. He said he was very supportive, as well as with Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, in the Situation Room in the White House. This is of high importance both to Congress and the administration, which gives me great hope that we're going to get this done. I think the impact, Josh, right here in Austin is going to be profound. I mean, we're already seeing companies like Samsung in my district expanding their manufacturing of these chips. Intel and IBM are looking at a joint venture that could be possibly here in Austin. IBM's largest facility is right here in Austin. And I think you'll see more and more of these fabrication plants popping up in this area, which will create high-paying jobs. And for each job it does create, it creates 5 more jobs in our Austin economy. It could be a really big boom for our economy here, but also to protect our national security.
What's standing in the way of those incentives?
Congress. You know, I've gotten better at passing legislation, but you really have to work across the aisle, which we've done effectively, to make sure you get it done. It was authorized in the National Defense Authorization Bill. The Senate has passed it, the funding piece, and now it's in the House right now, where I will be sort of leading the effort to get it done in the House. We'll probably have a conference committee, House and Senate, and then hopefully get this done by the end of the year.
All right, Congressman McCaul, thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.